On behalf of Merritt College faculty and staff, I welcome all of you from Puente, the Puente Club, from the community, and all of our students. Welcome to this event. I think this is so very important, particularly in this particular college and this particular room where activism, most colleges are just kind of, the last few years, activism and social justice and change and all of that. Merritt was born that way, okay? And so that's something that's very special to all of us on this campus. And to celebrate the memory and to honor and observe Cesar Chavez is huge. Cesar Chavez did so much for so many, not only for the Latino, Hispanic community, but for all. He was very much a very close friend of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so they both had very similar aspirations for the people, not just one people, but for all people, and the poor people, the people we serve here at Merritt, the people we serve out in our community. So it's important that we continue his legacy, his memory, his nonviolent ways of bringing community together is extremely important. And always we need to continue to be educated about how to do that, what that meant. I really was taken by the quote in your brochure, and if you haven't seen it, you need to pick it up and read it, because this is something that needs to stick with all of us. And that's the one that's right down here in this little gray box, and where he says, we cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress and prosperity for our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include the aspirations and needs of others for their sakes and for our own. And that is so true. And that's what Merritt College is about. So I'm very grateful and want to again thank the Puente program, the Puente Club, and everyone who was involved in making this possible to keep the memory, the vision alive of Cesar Chavez and the principles and core values, the social justice, the social change, the equity, okay, that Merritt College promotes every day on this campus and out in the community. So welcome, please listen carefully. We've got some great speakers coming forward, so listen to what they have to say. And then even more than that, think about how each one of you can put into action something that this great man stood for. So with that, welcome and enjoy the afternoon.
Bienvenidos, bienvenidas, welcome to this beautiful day, this beautiful event. As our president, Dr. Burns, mentioned that she recognized, I really want to say thank you for recognizing the Puente Project and the Puente Club. I think very few administrators have ever done that. And so I think it's really important because there is the Puente Project, which is the academic program, and it starts every fall, a new class, right? But then the Puente Club is definitely a part of the Puente Project, but it's open to everyone. Like anyone can join the Puente Club. And so, first of all, I just want to recognize both the Puente class, those of you who are here, all of the folks who are students who are wearing their Puente t-shirts today very proudly, and then those who are in the Puente Club. You guys are doing an amazing job this year, and really this event was, I kept making the joke, it's like Lord of the Flies, right? Like they really took it upon themselves to initiate a lot of stuff with the help and the guidance of the Puente team. The new Puente team is Counselor Jose Salceda, and the English instructor, Professor Evan Nichols. So some of you have known that I was the Puente English instructor for 12 years, and this is the first year that I'm not actually directly related or directly working with the program, but I am always, like, once a Puentista, always a puentista, right? And that is whether you are part of the Puente Project, the academic classes, or the Puente Club. Once you're puentista, you know, the idea is that you guys come back. You guys come back and you help each other. So that's one thing I wanted to say just today is mentorship. Find a mentor. Find a mentor, because I did not get here without help, without people who really helped me along the way. And some people don't even know they helped me, right? They just kind of paved the way, made it possible, made me think, oh man, I could do that. And maybe I never got a chance to tell them, but those were mentors. They were, you know, we call them role models, mentors. But mentors are a little bit more than a role model. Mentor is somebody who's really going to actually take you under their wing and work with you. Does everyone here have a mentor? It could be someone here on campus, or someone out in the community, or in your church, your neighborhood, or even in your family. Someone who's going to keep an eye out on you, just kind of ask you, hey, what's up? How are you doing? Right? They might ask you about your classes. They might ask you about your grades, right? You also need to look for a mentor. Not just wait for someone to appear, but somebody, you know, it might be your math teacher, really, even if you hate math. It might be your counselor. It could be even your English teacher, right? Somebody who's gonna just watch out for you, and then, you know, you can sit. And I have some students like that, just kind of come and sit, and they just sit there and they just say, "What's up?" And then I'm like, you know what? I don't have time right now, but come back in about an hour. You know, sometimes it's like that. And students who really know the idea that they need help will understand, will get that. All right, you don't have time for me right now, but I'll come back in 1 hour, right? And so sometimes I really just want to convey that idea that we all need help. We all need somebody to help us along and figure things out, right? Especially through the college process, right? So, like I said, I was the Puente English instructor for 12 years, and in 2005, we had our first annual Cesar Chavez event. And that was, you know, it's grown a lot, and it's beautiful to see what it's become. But that was our first year, so now this is the 12th annual Cesar Chavez event. I would like Professor Nichols to come here and Professor Salceda.
First of all, I want to say, echo Professor Santana's words. Welcome to our 12th annual Cesar Chavez celebration. A quick point too, during the program, or after the program, I want to make sure, hopefully you have a minute or two to walk around and look at our art pieces. Many of them have a description about the history of the art pieces, so I would encourage you to walk around and spend some time reading over those descriptions and looking at our art pieces. A little bit about me and my history with Cesar Chavez, or my reflection on Cesar Chavez is this is a very important day for me personally. My parents were migrant farm workers. They worked actually about an hour and 15 from here in Napa at the vineyards. They were out. They migrated from Mexico to the vineyards in Calistoga and Santa Elena area, working backbreaking jobs, and so they would take us at times out to the fields, and we were able to see firsthand the backbreaking jobs that they were working and the harsh conditions. And so for me personally, when I reflect on Cesar Chavez and his legacy and his fight for better wages and better working conditions, I truly have an appreciation for him and also for his legacy in the United Farm Worker movement. And so personally for me, I think it's a very special occasion, and I appreciate each and every one of you for being here with us today. So I'm going to turn it over briefly to Professor Nichols.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here and joining our family for today. For me, it has been an incredible honor to fall into the Puente family this year. And I would say that this year's Puentistas had the added benefit of the normal team would be one English professor, one counselor, but we were still picking the brain of Professor Santana all year long, and she was there for us every time we needed her to be. So it's been an incredibly rich year, and I have a mentor who has helped me so much, so I want to thank you so much for that. Evan Nichols. I grew up in San Diego, en la frontera, pues. I was the only English speaker on an all Spanish-speaking soccer team going through school. And from a very early age, my father, who was a professor at San Diego State, family tradition, he started talking to me about farm workers. And when I was little, he told me about a play he was writing that was about how the farm workers were only given short-handled hoes to do their work. So they had to bend over so that the bosses could see that they were working. And his play was called The Song of the Short-Handled Hoe. And so very early on in life, I learned about justice and injustice, and it began to form in my brain. I went on to UC Santa Cruz and studied Latin American studies and learned more about the rich history of California and the Chicana resistance and the movement. And so I feel so lucky to be working with these students. And I want to just say a quick word about these officers here. Mr. Salceda and I get to meet every week with them for an hour, maybe more, because they give their time up way beyond what we're asking them to do. They keep scheduling more meetings. They're not like the rest of us who try to find a way out of the meetings. They add on, let's meet Friday. A bunch of them this weekend said, let's get together and drive around, take pictures of murals, and put together this slideshow you're going to see. So they give way beyond, and they put together this whole thing. They are the producers, the artists, the writers behind the scenes, and I'm blessed. We both feel so lucky to work with them. So we're going to have them introduce themselves again and say your different positions as officers.
Hello everyone, my name is Jessica Padilla. I'm the president of the Puente Club.
Hey everyone, my name is Miguel. I'm the historian of the club, or the photographer for all the events.
My name is Juan Estrada and I'm the ICC representative.
Hi everyone, my name is Yami Lex and I am the secretary.
Hello, my name is Diana Morales Garcia and I'm the treasurer.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lizette Sanchez, and I'm the Puente Vice President.
So, I would also like to introduce to you somebody very important, an ally in very many ways here at Merritt College. And I've known him for some time, but now that we are neighbors, I've gotten to know him a lot better in the last couple of years, I would say. He's the executive director of the Street Scholars Program here on campus. And his name is Mr. Ron, sorry, I just forgot, Ron Moss. Mr. Ron Moss, as I said, he's executive director of the Street Scholars Program. If you don't know about the program, he can say a few words. I've asked him actually to come, and I wanted to make sure that he was here because he has been, like I said, an ally. He also has recently helped me acquire something that I am going to give as a gift to the Puente program. I don't see it as necessarily my farewell gift because that sounds just too sad, and I'm once a Puentista, always a Puentista. But I am going to ask him to first say a few words and then to help me give the gift to you all.
Thank you, Lisa. I don't have a lot to say. I just want to say that the relationship that Professor Santana Gonzalez and I have built over the last year or 18 months or so is about community. It's about not working in silos, but actually working together. And that's something that she understands and that I try to perpetuate with all of my relationships. And we have a good one. I think that as organizations, we are similarly minded in our objectives. My population is primarily formerly incarcerated students here at Merritt College. As the executive director of the Gamble Institute, I see my role as providing mentoring support and student services access to students who would otherwise not know how to navigate an academic environment. It's really that simple. And within that process, I reached out to Professor Gonzalez, and she and I have been diligently working to build a collaborative that serves not just our specific populations, the formerly incarcerated Hispanic students, but all of the general population at Merritt College. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here and partake in such a wonderful celebration as in connection with the Filipino American and farm workers. We're side by side with I want to say Dr. Chavez, because that's how I feel he should be considered. So, with further ado, there is an individual in the audience who allowed me and entrusted me with these photographs, photographed by Gilbert Ortiz. And I'd like Cynthia Bonta, who is actually the mother of Assemblyman Rob Bonta, to come up and actually talk about that exhibit, because I've been holding that exhibit in my office for about a year now, and it's just a perfect time to send the message to say, this is what took place many, many years ago, and this is your generation of, your legacy. Come on up, Cynthia.
Thank you, Maria, for introducing me. I'm not expecting this, but I was very interested in coming because Maria had displayed these photographs, which are really entitled Faces of Farm Workers, taken by Gilbert Ortiz. Are they all there? You will find one of the pictures as the short-handed hoe. Is the short-handed handled hoe here?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you come up, you will actually see that. And as you will notice, the faces of the farm workers during Cesar Chavez's time is really multicultural. They're not all Hispanic, they're not all Filipino. There were a lot of Middle Eastern also. So I have also with me little handouts about Gilbert, the photographer. He's a photojournalist, and he used his photography to tell the news. I also happen to have another handout that has to do with the Delano grape strike itself, that we won together after 5 years of struggle. We have to thank Cesar Chavez for always wanting to lead the movement non-violently, but still we had some losses. But that's one of the things about the movement, it's non-violent.
Social injustice and economic inequality have always been practiced in our nation's working industry. Irish need not to apply, Hispanics, we don't want your kind, and Blacks, Irish need not to apply, Hispanics, we don't want your kind, and Blacks, don't even show your face. This was a typical response to ethnic minorities in America's workplace. Nepotism and favoritism were the norm and status quo, as if it was not about your knowledge or skill, but about who you know. Let us never forget the union and labor laws, which even the playing fields. Racism and discrimination and segregation on our nation's history is a blight. And in spite of all the civil rights laws, we still have to fight. For a measure of equal opportunity and for some respect and little dignity, let us never forget the revolution. Dr. King Jr., Medgar Evers, Cesar Chavez, and Rosa Parks. Those who stood up against injustice by igniting a socially conscious spark. They did not back down, nor would they back off. They took a moral stand so that every human being in this country could have an equal chance. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all citizens shall be treated the same regardless of race, color, age, gender, or even how we pronounce your name. And as we celebrate, let us never forget those who led the fight. In the struggle for social justice, economic equality, and basic human rights. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, again. We gathered a slideshow about Cesar Chavez, and we got a collection of artwork from Cesar Chavez Park, which is on 38th and Foothill, if anyone is interested in checking it out. They had a seating arrangement with a bunch of tiles and a bunch of art from students from probably the age of 5 and older, and a lot of other community artists that gathered to do a history of what the Cesar Chavez movement was about and the whole farm worker movement. So we gathered this was a picture from one of the tiles, Artes y Cultura, which is art and culture. So this is the park here. We did like a theme where we have what the problem was about and the method, like the marching and everything, and we also added some community members like Dolores Huerta and Philip Veracruz, who were part of this movement.
So, as many of you know, the conditions farm workers worked in were incredibly inhuman. The growers were ignoring these laws. They were paying them 90 cents a day, putting them in terrible housing, and Cesar Chavez came from this. His family spent a lot of his life in San Joaquin Valley, and eventually, when the Filipino farm workers actually started with a boycott and a strike to go for higher wages, Cesar Chavez supported them. Grapes were very central to this movement because they had to be picked right away, and the strike really hit the growers hard. Cesar Chavez's goal was initially just to strike for higher wages and working conditions, but he eventually worked to fight to overthrow the entire farm labor system. So, as I mentioned before, he grew from just working on this to becoming a real civil rights activist and a leader fighting for equality, justice, and for everyone, farmer or everything else. His goal expanded into education and more. So his movement, as I mentioned, started at the farms, and 6 months later, he took the fight to the Capitol, and he decided that fighting on the farm workers' plantations was not good enough. He wanted to get more attention, he wanted to bring everyone into this. And he started a march that would become one of the most important marches in US history. It's a 300-mile march that is the longest protest march ever done. He passed through a lot of farms, gathering more support and more media attention along the way. So by the end of this, when he got to the Sacramento State Capitol, this is a huge deal and really brought light to this problem. His approach to this whole thing, as mentioned before, was a really nonviolent approach. This was really important to him, and he was committed to this. He fought through hunger strikes, through boycotts, and through this march, and he remained true to his principles. He said to change that would be to lose sight of what their goal is. So that's why he became closely aligned with Dr. Martin Luther King and other civil rights leaders.
This is Felipe Rivera Cruz. He was a Filipino-American labor leader, farm worker, and a leader in the Asian American movement. He was a co-founder of the Agriculture Workers Organizing Committee, which later emerged to the National Farm Workers Association to become the United Farm Workers. Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, Philip Veracruz, and other leaders decided that both unions would strike against the grapes. This decision was to strike. It became one of the most famous decisions ever made in the entire history of the farm worker struggles of California. His legacy still goes on, and since Veracruz Middle School, in honor of Veracruz, was the first school in the United States to name after a Filipino American. Dolores Berta is a labor leader and civil rights activist who was the co-founder of the National Farm Workers with Cesar Chavez, and that also became the United Farm Workers. She received many awards for her community service, women's rights, and her support and help of American workers. And she's still fighting for human rights today. On January 21st, 2017, she was a co-chair of the Women's March on Washington, D.C., which is the day after the inauguration of Trump as president. Her legacy still goes on, and there are some schools around California named after her.
And just like Deanna was saying, the legacy is still going on. There's a bunch of murals, and this is the whole purpose of our presentation, was that there's a lot of artwork around our community. Many people aren't really comfortable with speaking up in public and telling people about certain situations and starting a movement with themselves, but they do it through their artwork. There's so many, and they were able to do it through our community and do it on the murals out in Oakland. And I think many of you have probably seen a bunch of murals in your community. And just like these here, the top one is in downtown Oakland, and it's just showing how all our community, this is our community here. Martin Luther King, all these people who were able to just fight for our future, to have a better future. And even to this day, it's not the best. And we can all see just how Donald Trump became president. And there's just a lot of problems with that. And so, for us to get together, just like you guys got together here to see our presentation and see what our event's about, is just to spread the word on our community that unity is power, and if we all get together, we can do so much with our voice and our energy and what we have. So this artwork is just for everyone to see. If we all keep our eyes open, if we all keep our hearts open and willing to learn, we can have a lot of power with it. And just like each and one of us, if you guys all have power and if we put it all together, we can create something beautiful and powerful and change so much in this world. So so Cesar Chavez's legacy still goes on, just like Martin Luther King and just like so many other activists and powerful people.
Okay, so next up we have our keynote speaker, who we recently just connected with, but I feel like we should have been connected with her, and now actually getting to talk to her one-on-one and as a group, we definitely have some connections there that will forever tie us together. We have Doreen Moreno. She is a Director, Government Advocacy and Community Engagement, Center for Community Health and Engagement at UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital, Oakland. She is the first Latina Chief of Staff for the first woman elected mayor of the city of Fresno, and a full bio can be found in the program. Now I present to you Doreen Moreno.
This is an interactive session here. I don't want to just necessarily provide some remarks or give a speech, but rather I would like the audience also to be part of the whole legacy of Cesar Chavez. I greatly appreciate hearing all the remarks this afternoon from those who have obviously done a lot of your homework about his background, about what he has meant to the Latino community, to all people of color, and actually to the world. Before I get started, actually, most of you motivated me this afternoon. I wasn't sure why I was bringing the photo that I'm about to show you, but I knew that for some reason it had to be part of this. I didn't know that you were going to have a photo display here. So allow me for just a moment to put the mic down. So if you would allow me to also introduce this photo to part of your photo display here for the afternoon, because this is a very, very precious photo to me, and so I will need it back, but I'd like to certainly add it to your collection. This is a photo of my mother, Virginia Sanchez Calderon, who is to the left. To the right is Dolores Huerta. I'll share with you in a moment my family's history with Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, and the UFW farm worker movement, which is a good part of why I'm here today. But this particular photo was taken about 5 years ago. My mother came to visit me, and I had actually gotten an invitation to hear Dolores Huerta speak at the San Francisco City Club. And they have known each other since the beginning of the UFW movement. And so, as a surprise to my mother, I decided to take her there. We took BART, went into San Francisco, then we had to walk for several blocks uphill to get to the San Francisco City Club. At one point, she was walking and walking, never did she know where she was going, and she finally stopped and said, "Mija, okay, I'm tired, and I'm not gonna walk anymore up, I don't know how many more blocks until you tell me where we're going." And I didn't want to disrupt the surprise that I had for her. And so I go, "Mama, please, it's just 2 more blocks. I promise, when you get there, you're going to love it." So she was like, "Okay, all right, 2 more blocks, you said." And so we get to the San Francisco City Club. We have to go to the 11th floor. And when we get off the 11th floor, there's this long line of people. And she's like, "What is this? Where are we going?" And I said, "I promise." She goes, "Do we have to now stand in this long line after I walked all these blocks to get here?" And so I said, no, I don't think so. Let me check this out. So I went to the front, and at the front of the line, before you got into the actual place, something like this, was Dolores Huerta. She was standing there, and she was greeting the people that were coming to hear her speak. It was a recognition dinner for her. And so when I saw her there, I went back to the end of the line. I brought my mother up to the front, and she stood up to the side. Dolores was here. My mother came up. She saw Dolores, and Dolores looked and saw her off to the side. And immediately Dolores says, "Virginia." And my mother says, "Dolores." And they went up to each other and hugged each other. I mean, this hug like as if, you know, they hadn't seen each other for years. They were so excited because they had so many memories of the early days of the movement. And, you know, it was that Kodak moment, so to speak. That was the moment that I hoped would be the case, which it was. This photo was taken after Dolores' dinner that evening. And so the whole story and the memories and, you know, that particular look in their eyes was basically, every time I see this photo, that's what I think of. So I'd like to go ahead and be able to just share that with you this afternoon. I've heard so many wonderful things about Cesar Chavez and from some of the speakers here, and what he's meant to the community and his legacy. And I think that sometimes there are many people who know who have heard of him. They know that he was the founder of the United Farm Workers Union. He's become an icon in the Latino community. We've seen many murals, schools named after him, streets, and also the fact that he's considered one of the trailblazers in our country, such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and many others. But what I think sometimes is missing is part of the history of how he got to that place. And so if you don't mind, I'd like to read just a little bit of that history that I think might fill in some of the gaps. I normally don't like to read when I speak to people, but I think in this particular case, there is some history that I think is very important that I think you need to hear. And I think also Cynthia Bonta, who was up here just a little while ago, telling you about her experiences with the movement. I do work with her son in the position that I have as Director of Government Community Relations for Children's Hospital. Wonderful legislator, has done a lot of things in terms of putting legislation forth in healthcare and other legislation for vulnerable communities. So you should be very proud of him. So, yeah, let's give him a hand, even though he isn't here today, but he's working on our behalf. So I'd like to just tell you a little bit about Cesar Chavez and some of his early years, and a little bit about what he was doing in the early years of the movement. So he was born on March 31st, which means if he was here with us today, he would be 90 years old. His courage, sacrifices, and enduring legacy serves as an inspiration for many Latinos and people from all ethnic groups who have also sacrificed to achieve social justice and civil rights for many generations to come. He was born actually in Yuma, Arizona, to immigrant parents, and he had 5 brothers and sisters. They traveled from Arizona to California and up and down the state, picking practically all the crops that you enjoy today on your table. Nice salads with lettuce and tomatoes, cucumbers, the almonds that some of you may like to eat, the peaches, the apricots, everything you can think of. I was at a recent event where Kevin De Leon, the Senate Pro Tem of the California State Legislature, was speaking. And I like the way he described this. He said, you know, there's so much talk today about immigrants and what they don't contribute, what people perceive that they are taking from this country in terms of social service programs, not contributing to the tax base and so forth. He says, that is all incorrect. He goes, if you don't believe me, then go ahead and do the research yourself. He goes, but the data's there. He goes, but you know, if you stop and think about it, every time you might decide to have a nice glass of Chardonnay or Merlot, or you go to a restaurant and you want to have a salad, and you have an idea of what you want in that salad, or you have to go to work and your children need to be taken care of. The most precious individuals in your life, who do you entrust your children with? Who are actually taking care of your children? When you walk out the door and all the construction that is happening in our communities today, look at who are some of those predominant people who are building the buildings that you're going to work in and live in. And I could go on from there. There's a number of immigrants and also a number of ethnic people that are contributing to this country every single day. So as Cesar's family moved up and down California, picking all those crops, he also personally experienced the conditions that he would dedicate his life to changing. The wretched migrant camps they experienced, that they lived in, the corrupt labor contractors, the meager wages for backbreaking work, and the bitter racism that existed. Later, he was introduced to labor organizing in 1952, where he met Father Donald McDonald, an activist Catholic priest, and Fred Ross, an organizer with the Community Service Organization. That's where Cesar learned his ability to do community coalition building, to understand the importance of communicating messages and galvanizing support. It wasn't something that he grew up with. He learned it. We all have to learn how we're going to do what's important in our lives. Earlier I heard somebody talk about mentors and role models. And if you don't have a mentor now, I would highly suggest that you think about it. It could be a neighbor. It could actually be your own parent. But it can also be others that you've been exposed to. A professor, your doctor, anyone. anyone that you are thinking that maybe it's a field that you would like to go into, or at least they may have experience with something that you're interested in doing one day. In 1962, Cesar resigned from the community service organization and decided that he would begin to form the United Farm Workers Union because of what he had seen and experienced. Through all of the early years of forming the movement, you've heard about when he knew that violence was not going to be part of the movement. That was touched upon, that was very important to him. The nonviolence approach to creating social change, civil rights, labor rights, he knew was critical. If you have violence in any form of change, particularly in trying to achieve civil rights, it's not going to be a positive end. In fact, so much so that he believed in that he realized, I need to bring more of national attention and public support to what we're doing. So that's where he began to fast, where he began the hunger strikes. And he would fast depending upon the status of where the union was at and what was going on at that time. But as you're trying to create major change in life, you will experience those kinds of tensions. And so I'm going to now go to what my experiences have been with the union and my family's involvement. So my grandparents were immigrants here from Puebla and Guanajuato. And they worked in the fields in the San Joaquin Valley as farm workers and as laborers their entire lives. So as my mother grew up here, she and her brothers and sisters also worked in the fields every summer. And as they got exposed to that, and during the early 60s, when the movement was starting, my mother felt compelled to want to do something. She happened to meet Cesar Chavez in 1966 in Delano, where the heart of the movement started. She was so impressed with that she got involved on a full-time basis. And so my grandparents played a big role with myself and my sister, because you always, when you're involved in any kind of change like that, you have to have an extended family support system. But I was with her as a child in many of the marches and rallies that she participated in, and also in many of the different types of events. And I do recall one particular one that sticks in my memory. And during those times of real tension between farm workers and teamsters and growers, there was violence as part of the movement, even though Cesar tried to keep that away, from the movement. And so there were a few farm workers that were killed. I remember one large funeral that was actually held in the grape fields. They had these wooden coffins right in the middle, and a sea of people out there at the funeral. And at the very front was Cesar Chavez, Catholic priest, and a man who I was about 8, 9 years old. A man who I remembered that I didn't realize, I knew he had to be somebody famous. I didn't really know to what level, and came to find out that he was Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy was a very staunch supporter of Cesar Chavez. And sometimes he would come to California, and he would actually participate in some of the marches. He would also be a friend to Cesar in terms of how to get legislation through That's one thing that Cesar learned through all of the efforts of the movement, is that he knew that to be involved, and if you really want to affect long-term change, you also have to do it through government and legislation. And so he was able to get people to help him learn what that meant, how to move that through, and also to develop the kind of influential support that he needed to put the movement in a place where it needed to be on behalf of farm workers. One of the Cesar's favorite quote is, "Once social change begins, it cannot be reversed." So once you let that genie out of the bottle, then it's time to go ahead and keep moving forward. And he continued to actually live his life that way to the very end. And some of that legislation that he got involved with, because he knew, I've got to do something to ensure that there are rights and other social justice involved for farm workers, he achieved the following accomplishments. They got rest periods for farm workers, portable bathroom facilities, clean drinking water, hand washing facilities to protect clothing against pesticide exposure, banning pesticide spraying while workers were in the fields, outlawing DDT and other dangerous pesticides, eliminating farm labor contractors and guaranteeing farm worker seniority rights and job security, establishing the first comprehensive union health benefits for farm workers, created parental leave rights, and established a pension plan for retired farm workers. And one of the most also important ones that you've heard a little bit about today, abolishing the use of the infamous short-handled hoe that crippled generations of farm workers. So why is the legacy of Cesar Chavez in the history of the UFW movement so important? Does anyone want to add to that? Why is his legacy so important today? Okay. Yes, please.
I feel like his legacy is important because there's a lot of movements going on. I feel like his legacy is important because there's a lot of movements going on right now that are negative, and it's a lot of people coming together on the wrong behalf of things that are causing a lot of our youth to be killed. And I feel like no one is getting the big picture of what he did to actually make changes to a lot of different races in our community. It's just a lot of different movements going on that I feel like we can reverse into something else, but everyone's belittling it. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having the courage to share your thoughts. Anyone else? Anyone else like to say, why is Cesar Chavez's legacy so important? We go over here.
One of the reasons why Cesar Chavez's legacy is so important is because as youth right now, it's really important that we study and pay homage to all those that walked before us, as Cesar Chavez did with his ancestors. Through honoring himself and his ancestors, he took big steps for community, and by us learning about his legacy and continuing to take steps forward, that's how we're going to change this earth, is by how we organize together and by, learning. You have to know where you come from to know where you're going. And so.
More, anyone else? No problem, we can come back. The those are excellent points. One of the, aside from working on labor rights that Cesar did for so long, what was integrated into the movement was also the importance of voting. There was a lot of voter registration drives that were taking place, and also the mobilization of people to get involved in their communities, both not only for social justice causes, but also to elect representation, political representation, in our city councils or on our board of supervisors. In other ways, if you don't have your voice at those important tables, obviously your voice is not going to be heard. And therefore, the laws that are passed, what you're seeing today, is exactly what will continue to happen if we're not at those tables, at those important tables. Thank you, yes, that's very important. At those important tables, and also to have people who represent the values and principles that are so important to our communities and to our future generations. He understood that, and that was a message that was also communicated during the movement. And I want to stress that today, because today, in California, almost 38% of the population is Latino. Combined with other ethnic groups, we are now the majority of California's population. So, therefore, the white population in California and across the nation is decreasing. I know everyone in this room is extremely bright. When you think about Donald Trump coming into office, and you look at the makeup of his cabinet, if you haven't seen it, I urge you to take a look at who are his close advisors, who are the people that are representing this country, and what are their key initiatives, and what is his budget that he recently released. All of the work and the advancements that Cesar Chavez, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., many other community activists whose names you may not even know, but who have been involved in the community, all that work that they've been doing is now looking to be rolled back. If all of you don't get involved in some way. That some way could be just even being good parents to your children. That's a real full-time job, okay, and an extremely important job. Raising good young men and women, but also others have time on your hands. If you're sitting at home watching television, you can watch some of your favorite programs, but you still have other time to get involved in some way. Whatever your passion is, if you like sports, there are children out there, young people, who can use your time for you to teach them something. Volunteer in just your neighborhood. Okay? Individuals like Cesar Chavez were just like you and me, except that they had the courage and they made the sacrifice. And when someone told them, no, this can't be done, what did he say? Sí se puede. Yes, we can. What did he say? Sí se puede. Yes, we can. What did he say? Sí se puede. Yes, we can. So yes, you can. Okay, challenge yourselves. Challenge yourselves. The young people that are sitting here today, all of the Puente student leaders, all of the others that are here at Merritt College and across our communities today, as it always says, you're our future. You're our future leaders. Somebody, you might think, well, I don't consider myself to be a leader. What is a leader? A leader basically is someone who looks around you and sees that life can be improved. Life can be improved. You can do it in a small way. You could do it in a medium way. You can do it in a big way. And be someone also that many people look towards. But the point is to get involved. There's no choice as to whether. Because if you look at where we're at today, the reason that we have the situation right now across the nation and issues coming up about peeling back onions, people think that racism didn't exist maybe in the United States anymore. Oh my goodness. I hope no one thinks that, because that is being shown to us every day. So how you change that is through voting. Through voting. I can't tell you how many doors I have knocked on over the years to go door to door to register people to vote. We did that a lot, in different campaigns. And when you go to doors, many times people would say, oh no, I'm not, you'd ask, if you're registered to vote. No, I'm not registered to vote. Oh, would you please vote? Oh, no, I'm not gonna vote. Mi voto no se importa. My vote isn't important. It doesn't matter. Do you think that your vote doesn't matter today? Yes. Had the votes been there, for Hillary Clinton, we would see a different situation today.
But don't you think that things would still be messed up? Don't you think that they'd still be oppressing our people? And racism would still exist.
Oh, racism, yes. You have to,
And Donald Trump, it's like two birds of the same, of the same bird,
different about that.
and I'm glad you bring that up, because I think that the divergence of perspectives and political perspectives is healthy in a democracy. That's where we live today, where you have the opportunity to have your own perspectives and your own ideals, but I can share with you mine, and mine being involved in the community as long as I have. And if you were to ask me, and this is my personal opinion and nothing more, but is rooted in being involved in the community for many years, if you were to ask me my opinion, the difference between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, like night and day. Okay, now don't take my word for it. Keep in mind what I said. Go do your research. I've done my research. And I have spent many years out in our communities, also walking precincts, for candidates that I believe in, that are going to be true to our values.